Well now, are you settled? Welcome back to Celticism. Now let your eyes soften. Don't clamp them shut. Let them rest half open, a little unfocused. If they close, open them gently again and let the shadows blur. Unclench your jaw and drop your shoulders. Let your breath move easy. In, the belly rises. Out, the belly falls. Arms heavy, hands warm, legs loose. If these stories help you to drift, tap subscribe so a new one is waiting each week. In the morning, leave a little comment and tell me how you got on. And come back every night and make this your resting place by the fire. Tonight, we'll sit with neighbors in a warm kitchen and let an old voice tell us what the fairies are. The first tale of the night is called Fireside and the Saucer. Rain hissed on the thatch, and Connor O Rourke stood at the gate, looking at the poor field. Moira touched his arm. "Come in from it, love." Their little girl, Bridget, went past with a tray, a small jug and a saucer, her stuffed rabbit under her elbow. "Where are you off to with the good milk?" Connor said, tired but trying to smile. "It's for the fairies," she said, bright as a match, and slipped round the gable. "Let her," Moira said. "It costs us nothing." They lifted the latch and went back inside. The kitchen was already full, boots by the door, steam off coats, turf burning sweet. Children sat cross-legged near the hearth, the grown-ups leaned on the dressers, and in the big chair, Sean Flaherty was already talking, voice low and warm, as steady as the clock. Connor and Moira moved along the wall and said nothing. They just listened the way you do when a good voice is going. "And mind," Sean was saying, "we don't throw their name about for sport. We say the good people or the neighbours or the Ishi if you're feeling grand. They have their way around roads, their own doors in hills. We only borrow the daylight in between." A child's hand went up. "Are they small, Sean?" Sean smiled into the fire. "Some are small, enough to hide in your pocket. Some are tall as hunger. Most are like us, quick to take offence, quick to repay a kindness. They live under mounds and in old forts, and in the thin places where the world wears through." Another child asked, "What's in the thin place?" "A spot where the skin between here and there is only a breath thick," Sean said. "A bend in the lane with wind from no direction. A ring of grass that keeps greener than the rest. A hill that hums when you put your ear to it." A boy near the crane asked, "How about the banshee? Is she real?" Sean stirred the turf with a poker, gentle. "A messenger, not cruel, not kind, a voice that comes before sorrow. She keens for a family and then she's gone. You don't chase her, you bow your head and you mind the living." A girl with plaits. "What about the puka?" "A rogue," he said, "who likes the dark and the high ground, a black horse one night, a great goat the next. He'll lead you off the safe path for the laugh of it. If you sense him near, turn your coat inside out and speak a prayer. He hates to be made plain. A young mammy by the wall. And the beautiful ones, Sean, not the tricks. Sean's eyes crinkled. They're the Lannan she, the fairy lover, who can make a poet out of a ploughman and a famous tune out of a poor fiddler's hands. But her gifts burn quick, mind. Be careful what you take and what you promise. He let the room breathe. Rain ticked at the small window, a kettle shifted on the hob. Now, the rules, Sean said softly, and the children leaned in of their own will. Old rules, but they keep a house right. Never mock them, not in a song and not in a joke. Never throw dirty water out the door after dark without a warning. Call, take care first. Don't cut the lone thorn in a ditch or put a spade in an old ring of earth. If a lantern flickers at the edge of a bog, let it flicker, don't follow. A boy whispered, "What if they take a shine to your baby?" Mothers went little and still. If a child sickens sudden and cries as if at nothing, Sean said gently, some will say changeling, I say this, keep a pin of iron on the blanket, a grain of salt at the bedside, and a small prayer at the window. Love the child through it. Love is stronger than fear. The room eased again. And when the soul flies, he went on, voice lower, we open the window, always. We stop the clock a moment so time won't snare the spirit. We cover the mirrors so no face is caught looking back. We leave a little light in the hallway and the way is clear. The dead should have no trouble leaving, and the living should have no trouble letting go. A small hand raised. Do they help us, Sean, if we're good to them? They may, he said, and his smile went a shade secret. They're fond of a bit of bread, they're fond of a dropping of milk, a kind word spoken into the night, and belief is a kind of door we hold open. The good people don't need our praise, but they don't refuse respect. He ticked the last bits off his fingers as if laying out tools for a job. Keep iron near the cradle and salt near the door, a crust in your pocket for luck, a blessing and a warning before you throw water. Mind crossroads at midnight, wells at noon, and lonely hills any time at all. If you're led astray, turn your coat and name your home. If you hear your name called from outside after dark, don't answer. Names are handles. A rip of soft laughter, a murmur of right enough from the older men. And one more thing, Sean said, glancing at the children and then at the grown-ups. There's no need to be afraid in your bed tonight. The worst of the old stories live behind us, but keep your bits of sense about you, a nail of iron, a pinch of salt, a small saucer on the step now and then, and you'll be grand. A child grinned, another hid her face and then peeped out again. Even Connor, by the dresser, felt something loosen in his chest. Questions bubbled and drifted. Who plays music in the rath? Do fairies ride on the wind? Why does a cow stare sometimes at nothing? Sean answered kindly and never in a hurry. Some tunes are borrowed from Underhill and you can hear it in them. Yes, they ride the wind, but only when the wind agrees. Cows see things before we do. If she won't pass a gap, you don't pass either. He told small tales to hang the rules on. A man who mocked at a thorn and broke his leg the next day. A girl who left milk in a hard year and found her churn richer after. A fiddler who woke with a tune in his fingers and wept as he played it because it was like a home and a loss together. Time passed soft as ash, and when the talk thinned, coats were lifted, hands were shaken, good nights were said. The neighbours stepped back into the wet dark. Sean rose slow, joints complaining, and Connor moved to the door to lift the latch for the last of them. Cold air came in, the yard smelled of rain and turned earth. Someone made a small sound, Moira or Connor or both, and the talk stopped in the doorway. The field beyond the low wall lay in the moonlight. Where the stalks had sagged and browned, they stood now straighter and thick. Not summer green, not miracle ripe, but alive again, strong enough to stand the winter. At the threshold, on the flag under the hinge, sat Bridget's saucer, empty, clean, as if tongue-washed. Connor bent and lifted it. He turned it in his hand, lost for a word. Moira looked at the old man. Sean only gave a small nod, like a man hearing a tune he knew long ago. Bridget, behind them, hugged her rabbit tight and whispered something to the night that was nobody's business but the night's. They shut the door and banked the fire. Sean took his cap and put it on slow, as if even that had a shape and an order. "Thank you for telling," Moira said. "Thank you for listening," he said. "A story's no use till someone holds it." He tapped the back of the chair. "Mind your bits, iron and salt, a word at the window when the time comes, and a dropping of milk when you can spare it." "Sean," Connor said, near shy, "do you truly think—" "I think what we do makes a road," the old man said, "and a road will carry a blessing the way a cart carries turf." He stepped out into the night, and the rain had turned to a fine mist, and the lane looked easy. Inside, Connor set the clean saucer on the dresser not far from the clock. He took Moira's hand and squeezed it once. Bridget kissed her rabbit's ear and slipped her tray back under the table, as proud and quiet as a queen. The house settled. The fire lowered. Outside, a small wind turned over the hedges as if looking for its own bed. And in the kitchen, like 100 kitchens, with neighbours like 100 neighbours, the old ways sat down among the new. And while Sean Flaherty swore the banshee was no threat at all, things can be different if you take what belongs to her. The next tale is called Bogwood. Fiacre Folan ran through the dark wood, bent in half, breath tearing at his throat. The trees were close and wet with night. Ferns slapped his boots, briars caught his coat. He clutched a small bundle under his arm, wrapped tight in a rag. It was the length of a rolling pin, hard and crooked inside the cloth. He slipped in the mud and dropped to one knee behind a thick ash. He pressed his back to the bark and held the bundle to his chest like a child. His breath came in little whimpers. He couldn't stop. He tasted iron and rain. "Tricia," he said, a broken whisper. "Tricia, I'm sorry." Somewhere behind him, deep in the trees, the night moved, a slow, dragging sound like something pulling itself along by hands. Then low, sobbing, long and wet, the kind that makes the small hairs lift on your neck. Fiacre closed his eyes. He clenched his jaw till it hurt. He pressed the cloth tighter. "Please," he whispered, "I didn't know." The sobbing faded, the wood went still, only the drip of water, the tick of leaves settling. He stayed there for a long time, shaking against the tree until the black began to turn to grey. Earlier that night, before the running, before the wood, the house had been quiet. It was a modest manor on a hill above the lake, 2 rooms downstairs, 2 rooms up, with a long, low kitchen and a good stone hearth. The last of the turf glowed in the grate, a clock clicked soft on the dresser. Fiacre put the last cup in the scullery and dried his hands. His wife, Tricia, folded a blanket at the end of the bed upstairs and laughed at nothing, the kind of small laugh you make when the day is done. They moved around each other with easy steps. She plaited her hair and tied it with a bit of ribbon. He checked the latch on the back door and the bolt on the front. "Wind's up," she said, listening at the window. "Storm by morning," he said. "We'll be glad of it on the lake. The fish come up for a bit of change in the weather." She rolled her eyes. "You and your fish." He grinned and kissed her forehead. They lay down, shoulder to shoulder, and the house settled with them. It must have been near 2 when Fiacre awoke, to a sound he had never heard in that place, or any place. It began as a slow, wet sob outside the window. Not a woman crying, not a fox or a cat. A sound like grief dragged across stone. It thickened and rose and dropped again, slow and heavy, like it hurt the throat that made it. Trish's hand found his arm under the blanket. He felt her nails press. "Fiacre," she whispered. He held his breath and listened. The sobbing stopped. Silence. Then a new sound, closer. A soft thud, and another. Something heavy close to the wall, and a scrape like nails on stone. A bang exploded against the outer wall beneath the window. The bed jumped. Tricia cried out, and the bang came again, and then another up along the length of the wall, as if a giant hand were slapping the stone and dragging its nails between the blows. The sobbing rose with it, wide and awful, filling the room without coming in. Tricia sat up and clutched the blanket to her chest. "Fiacre," she said, voice small. "The banshee?" He shook his head hard. "No." "It is," she said. It is, listen to it." "It can't be," he snapped, though his own voice trembled. "It doesn't follow us. There's no call for it. We've no kin left for it to warn, and we're well." The sobbing went high for a breath, and then dropped again like a great rope slipping. Tricia's eyes were wide and wet in the candle's glow. "Then what is it?" Fiacre swallowed. He tried to hold his thoughts still. The bang came again by the door downstairs. The scrape climbed the outer corner. He saw, in his mind, the satchel by the kitchen table. He saw the rag he'd wrapped around the thing he had brought home from the lake, and his stomach went hollow. 2 days before, he had been fishing the lower end of the loch at noon. The wind had been flat. The water was the colour of lead. He had beached the boat at the old bank by the gnarled tree that grew half out of the black water like a hand. There, snagged in the roots, he had seen a length of bogwood, the colour of old tea, polished by water and time. It was twisted and beautiful. He had rinsed the muck away and felt the smoothness of it under his thumb. In a certain way, it looked like a comb, crooked and wide. He laughed at himself for thinking it and brought it home to dry. Now, with the sobbing climbing his walls and the pounding like a fist, he didn't laugh. He threw the blanket aside. "Stay here," he said. "Don't go leaving me," she squeaked, but he was already up. He went down the stairs 2 at a time, flinching at each slap to the wall. The front room was a pool of candlelight and shadow. His satchel hung on the chair by the table. He grabbed it and pulled the rag-wrapped piece free. He held it up in both hands and saw it plain. It was a comb, not carved by him or any other. The teeth were half rotten and crooked. The back was dark and sleek. It looked old and wrong and lovely. His heart fell. He rewrapped it quick, hands shaking, and ran back for the stairs. When he reached the bedroom door, he stopped, dead. Tricia hung 10 feet off the floor, her nitrous floating around her ankles as if in water. Her throat was pinched in midair, the skin dented deep by something unseen. Her eyes rolled white, only a rim of iris at the bottom. Her bare feet kicked, slow and weak. A shape stood pressed into the wall by the window. It was tall, too tall for the room, 8 feet if it was an inch, hunched and crooked, as if it had been broken and set wrong. It was more shadow than body, but the shadow had weight. Limp, scraggy hair drifted about it like wet weeds. Its eyes were white, blank and bright in the candlelight. The thing's long arm held Tricia by the throat without touching her, as if the air itself were the grip. It drew her along the wall, slow as a rag dragged through water. Her shoulder left a smear of dust on the whitewash. Her mouth opened and shut without a sound. Fiacre couldn't move. The sobbing filled the room, deafening now. The thing's hair lifted and fell with a sound as if in a storm no one else could feel. "Leave her," Fiacre croaked. "Take it back. I'll bring it. I'll put it back." The thing turned its head. The white eyes found him, the sobbing cut off as if a door had closed. In the new silence, the ticking of the dresser clock was sudden and mad. Fiacre took 1 step back, and then another. He clutched the bundle to his chest and ran. He ran down the stairs, across the flagstones, out the front door with the latch still down, out into the cold night and the dark yard. He skidded and slammed his shoulder on the corner of the house. He saw the marks then, deep, long gouges in the stone, like claws had raked at every window and every corner, biting into the lime. He looked back, saw the upstairs window black and blank. He saw nothing in it, which was worse than seeing something. He ran. He didn't take the lane. He cut across the field and into the trees, and the sobbing rose behind him again, long and hard and close. He ran until his chest burned. He ran until his legs shook. He ran until the ground rose and fell, and he fell with it. He found the ash tree and pressed his back to it, and held the bundle and said his wife's name like a prayer and a curse together. Dawn came, slow and grey. The wood was a world of wet and mist. Fiacre woke to his own shiver. He had not meant to sleep. He did not know he had. The sobbing was gone. The wood was only wood again. birds made small sounds, unsure of themselves. Somewhere water tripped over stone. He pushed himself up, every bone complaining. He unwrapped the bundle and looked once more at what he'd taken. The comb looked darker in the morning, more the colour of blood than tea. He didn't let his fingers touch the teeth. He wrapped it and held it hard. He found the faint path to the lake by habit. He moved like an old man and like a thief. Branches slicked his coat. His boots sank and pulled free with little pops. The gnarled tree at the water's edge looked the way it had always looked, which was to say, it looked wrong, like a hand reaching for a thing it couldn't reach. The roots were old and black. The water under them was deep. Fiacre knelt in the mud. He set the bundle on his knees and unwrapped it. He held the comb with 2 fingers at the back, far from the teeth. He tried to speak and found his throat thick. "I didn't know," he said. "I'm sorry, I took what wasn't mine. I'm putting it back. Just leave us be." He leaned over the water and slid the comb into the place between 2 roots where he had found it. It fitted there too well, as if it had never left. He let go. Something in the water sighed, not the lake or the wind. A breath, long and low, as if the roots themselves had lungs. Fiacre drew his hands back and wiped them on his coat, though they were not wet. Behind him, the wood made a sound like a man waking after a long illness. A soft moan, a crack of something stiff straightening, the drag of something heavy finding ground. It came from the bank, not far, and moved toward him, slow. Fiacre didn't turn. He looked at the roots and the water and the place where the comb was, and then he closed his eyes and lowered his head. "Tricia," he said once, in a voice so small he barely heard it. The sobbing began again right at the back of him, so loud and low it shook the water. The sound bent him forward, pressed on his shoulders like 2 hands. He felt hair brush the back of his neck, wet and cold. He smelled river weed, old wood, and the sweet rot of peat. He heard bones shift like oars in a rotten boat. "Take it back," he said, though he had already done it. "Take it back and leave us." The sound rose and rose until it filled his head and pushed everything else out. He opened his mouth to breathe, and the sound went in, and he was full of it, and then there was nothing but white. They found him by the tree near noon, kneeling in the mud with his hands on his thighs, looking at the water with eyes that saw nothing. His hair had gone white in the night. When they lifted him, he didn't fight, he didn't speak. His lips moved, and a little sound came out that might have been a name or a sob or a prayer. He made it over and over without knowing. At the house, the marks on the walls were deep and clean. The whitewash was smeared along the paths where something had been dragged. In the bedroom, the bed was on its side. The clock had stopped at 2. They found Tricia on the floor by the wall. There were no bruises on her throat, though she had hung in the air. Her eyes were open and looking at nothing at all. Her skin was cold, and her mouth was a little open, as if to speak. They said it was a seizure, some fit that took her without warning. They said Fiacre had taken a fright and lost his wits. The priest said prayers, the doctor shook his head. The neighbours whispered into their teacups and did not say the word banshee out loud, but they thought it under their tongues. No one cut the gnarled tree by the lake, no one fished that bank for a long time. Children were called home early, and combs found on the roads were not picked up, but kicked into the nettles. Fiacre sat in a chair by the hearth and looked at the fire. He didn't eat unless food was put in his mouth. He slept when his body fell asleep and woke when his body woke. Sometimes in the night he cried out, a low sound like a man drowning in a basin. Sometimes he laughed once, short and wrong, and then was quiet. If anyone said Trish's name, he put his hand to his chest as if to keep something from falling out. On wet nights, when the wind pushed the lake up the stones and the reeds banged their heads together, they said you could hear a faint sobbing down by the old tree, slow and far and too heavy for air. It came and went. It never climbed the hill again. No one went to look. No one needed to. And when boys bragged in the summer about taking what they found, someone older would say, "You're no Fiacre Folan, and you'd best keep it that way." That was all, and it was enough. And they called the story Bogwood when they spoke of it at all. The house in your mind is quiet. Let your breathing slow further, soften your eyes, easy, unclench your jaw. Feel the weight of your hands, your legs, the mattress holding you. You're safe. You're relaxed as we drift into the next tale. And now for the next tale, a tale entitled Siblings Rest. There were 2 beds in the back room tucked low under the slope of the roof. The wind often pressed at the thatch, and the timbers creaked like old men shifting in their sleep. Yvonne had the bed nearest the door. John slept beneath the small window that looked out over the ash tree and the fields beyond. There were children still, John, only 10, Yvonne, 12, close in age, close in everything. They bickered often, but it was the kind of bickering that folds back into laughter a breath later. Brother and sister, all they had, most nights, was each other. The first night, Yvonne was half gone to sleep when she heard it. A faint sound across the room, soft, dry, and rhythmic. Her eyes opened, she lay still, frowning into the dark. It was John, some odd noise he was making in his sleep, like lips working with no spit to ease them. She turned her back to him, pulled the blanket tight, and let herself drift. At breakfast the next day she gave out to him. "You kept me awake all night, smacking away with them lips of yours." John looked blank. His hair stood on end, socks sagging at his ankles. "No, I didn't," he said. "You did," she insisted. He laughed, sheepish. "Maybe you dreamed it." She rolled her eyes. She didn't press any further. The next night it came again, this time louder and longer. Yvonne groaned, pulled the blanket over her ear. "John," she muttered into her pillow, "please." The sound faded, but not for long. She fell asleep spitefully, her teeth clenched. The next morning, she put a tumbler of water on the table. "See this here. Bring this to bed with you tonight. You sound like you've got a mouthful of dust." John only grinned, teasing her. "Crows make worse noises." "Crows aren't in the bed beside me," she snapped. He laughed it off. He was kind. He didn't mean harm. That night, it was unbearable. The sound came in little bursts now, like chewing. "For God's sake, John," she hissed and hurled her spare pillow toward him. The sound stopped. She lay back, sighing, and closed her eyes. And then it began again. Soft and patient and relentless. The next morning she was pale and sharp at the table. John looked wounded by her words. "I can't help it," he said. "I'm not doing anything." "You are," she said, tired beyond her years, but she let it drop. What else could she do? And that night, the house slept deep. The rafters stilled, the air felt heavy as if it knew. Yvonne woke with her throat dry, her heart already quick. She struck a match, lit her candle, and turned toward John's bed, and the sight froze her. John lay flat on his back, arms at his sides, paralyzed. His eyes were open, wide, unblinking, piercing straight at her. It was a stare that seemed to pin her where she sat, like a nail through cloth. And he was crawling with spiders. They covered him in a shifting tide, across his chest, over his arms, down his neck. They streamed from his hair and the hollow of his throat. Tiny legs probed and scurried and vanished into his clothes, and then they found his mouth. One after another, they pressed to the corners of his lips and slipped inside. His jaw moved slowly, grinding them down. His eyes never left hers. A spider crawled across his cheek, paused at the curve of his mouth, then vanished between his lips. His jaw worked again. Yvonne whispered his name. "John!" Nothing changed. His body stayed rigid, his eyes wide, his mouth chewing. The spiders poured across him in dozens, their small bodies twitching, legs scratching as they disappeared into him. She clutched the candle tighter, her knuckles white. Her lips trembled, but she made no sound. If she screamed, the house would hear her, but who could save him now? The chewing went on, steady, patient, inhuman. His piercing eyes pinned her until her breath came shallow, until her chest hurt from holding it in. And when the morning came, John blinked awake like any boy, stretching, yawning, smiling at her as though nothing had passed. "You're pale," he said. Did you sleep at all? She could not answer. She only stared, remembering the eyes that had stared through her all night. What she didn't know is what he had done. Down by the stream, in some summer past, John had crouched in the mud. His hands cupped something fragile, a creature no taller than his palm, wings glimmering like spun glass. He grinned, cruel in the thoughtless way of boys. He pinched one wing between finger and thumb and pulled. The wing tore away with a whisper too soft for air. He laughed and did it again. The tiny voice that rose then was clear as a bell in a skull. If it's creepy crawlies you want, you little loother, it's creepy crawlies you'll get. And so the night closes further, leaving only the hush of an old house and the quiet beat of your own breath. Keep it slow and soft and let it carry you deeper still as the next story comes to guide you further into rest. And the next tale of the night is called Trial of the Wolves. The room was colder than the night outside. Rain dripped steady from the vault above, falling into black puddles on the flags. Torches hissed and spat, their smoke clinging thick to the stone. Malachi Kearns walked in first, torch in hand, jaw set. Behind him came Patsy Burke, broad and restless, eyes alive with a need for blood. 3 more men followed, silent, carrying their burden. 2 prisoners. They were dropped into heavy oak chairs, facing each other across the wet floor, their arms lashed tight, ropes biting deep. Colm Doran sat rigid, eyes darting, lips tight as if holding back a sob. Eamon Durkin shook outright, whispering to himself, the cords creaking with his tremors. Malachi fixed them with his torch. You know why you're here? Men found torn, cattle gutted, dogs gone, collars empty, tracks in the clay that vanished on stone. The old word is faileth, and one of you is the wolf, and by dawn we'll know which. Both men cried out at once, voices tumbling over one another, swearing innocence, begging and pleading. Quiet, Malachi barked, and the runes sank into dripping silence. He turned to Colm first. Where were you the night divine was torn in the lane? Colm's chest heaved. Home, by the fire, ask anyone. No one saw you, Malachi said. I don't need a witness for my own heart, Colm shouted, voice cracking. I never left it. Patsy stepped forward, torchlight searing Colm's face. You'd swear black was white if it saved your skin, boy. You've a temper, Doran. Half the parish will say it. You expect us to think you stayed meek at home while men were ripped in half. I've raised my fist, aye, Colm stammered, but I've never killed, God help me, never. Patsy spat on the floor. God's tired of your kind. Malachi turned slowly to Eamon. And you, where were you when Murphy's heifer was open stem to stern? In my bed, Eamon said once, eyes wide. I was asleep. Please, Malachy, I swear it. Alone? My sister came back late from the wake. She'll tell you I was there. She was gone half the night, Malachy pressed, and no one else to see you. Eamon's head shook so hard the rope groaned. Then God saw me, that's all I can say. Patsy growled. Convenient, God doesn't give witness. Both men babbled then, Colm shouting his innocence, Eamon pleading through tears. Their voices filled the room until Malachy slammed his hand against the chair and roared, Enough! Silence returned but for the drip of water. Malachy's eyes moved from one to the other. You both swear it wasn't you, but the blood was spilt by someone. A wolf doesn't vanish into thin air. If not you, then who? Colm blurted. Him, look at him, whimpering like a beaten dog. That's your wolf, not me. Eamon cried out. He lies. He's the brute among us. Malachy, you know me, you know my people. I've no evil in me. Patsy barked a laugh. No evil. The wolf wears a friendly mask. You think we've not heard that before? Eamon sobbed. Please, I've done nothing. Malachy's voice cut through. Two dead men torn like rags. You sit bound before us. One of you's guilty. Which? Neither answered. Their denials collapsed into silence, broken only by their shuddering breath. Malachy leaned forward, voice low like iron dragged across stone. If you keep your silence, both of you'll hang at dawn, confess, and you may live to see another night. Colm's mouth trembled. I've nothing to confess, nothing. Patsy slammed his fist into Colm's chair. Cowards, both ye, I'd hang ye side by side and let the crows sort it. The hall rang with echoes. The prisoners whimpered, their faces pale as ash, their eyes wide and desperate. At last, Malachy straightened, his gaze fixed on Eamon, and he saw an ever so slight smirk behind his lips. It's him, Durkin. He's the one. I know a liar when I see one. Eamon screamed, thrashing in his ropes. No, Malachy, please, no, I beg you. Patsy snapped to silence the men. Up with him, bind his legs, he's your wolf. The three men pulled in, ropes pulled tight, Eamon sobbing and fighting, his cries filling the room. Colm sagged in his chair, a shuddering breath of relief escaping him. Then, desperate to press it home, he shouted, Yes, it's him. You found him. He's your wolf, not me. Bind him fast. The men bent to Eamon, knotting cords across his chest, curses flying at his thrashing. But none of them saw Colm rise. The rope slid from him as if they'd been smoke. His chair scraped the flags as he stood, his body hunched, his bones stretching under the skin, his teeth showing sharp in the torchlight. His eyes gleamed yellow. A growl rolled from his chest, deep as thunder. One of the vigilantes turned and froze and whispered, Christ Jesus, before crossing himself. The others spun round. Colm Doran loomed above them, half man, half beast. They thought they'd chosen wrong, until another sound came, a deeper growl, wet and terrible, behind them. Eamon Durkin's rope snapped like twine. He rose in broken jerks, head lolling, jaws lengthening, black hair bristling down his arms. His eyes rolled white, then fixed on them bright and merciless. Now the men were caught between two wolves. Torches shook in trembling hands, the room filled with shouts and curses, the splintering crack of chairs. Malachi bellowed for them to run, but his voice was swallowed by two howls rising together, braiding into one monstrous roar that shook the stones themselves. The men fled into the night, stumbling, torches tumbling into the mud. Behind them, the ruin thundered with snarls and tearing wood. And when dawn came, others came with it. They found the ruins still, torches burnt to stubs, chairs splintered and ropes scattered. On the flags, black spatters marked the floor. Out in the fields, the trail continued. Puddles of blood scattered in the grass stretched 100 feet and moved across the countryside before vanishing at the hedge. Some swore it was the vigilante's own blood dragged into the night. Others swore it was prey taken by beasts. No tale agreed save one. The parish never slept easy again. And now the ruin is quiet again. The torches have gone out, the ropes lie slack, and the howls are far behind you. Only your own breath remains slow and steady and soft. With each breath, you can let yourself drift a little deeper, your shoulders loosening, your jaw growing heavy, your thoughts fading away. In the morning, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and maybe a few words in the comments to let me know how you slept. Come back here every night. Each night a new tale will be waiting, and each night you'll find yourself sinking a little further into rest. Share these tales with a friend so they too can follow these stories into sleep. For now, let your body soften, your breathing slow, and your eyes close and drift softly into the storm. Good night.